Hi, everybody. How's your day going? How's your afternoon going? Welcome to a new episode of MAME Politics. This is episode 5 of my ongoing experimental series in trying to bait and switch casual streamers or casual game streaming watchers on YouTube and other social media into checking out some radical politics. So I'm going to cruise over to the chat right now, see what's up. Give me 1 second. All right, guys and gals, thanks for joining. So I wanted to start this episode off with a question that I was asked right before I started. Someone jokingly asked me if they think Bernie will also kill kids on the basketball court. I think there's a pretty clear answer to that. I mean, when I made that song about Obama, I wasn't referring to any literal real world examples of Obama actually bombing or drone bombing kids while they were playing basketball on a basketball court. But I thought that it was appropriate because he had already drone bombed so many kids and was responsible for killing so many kids. So, in that figurative sense, would Bernie also be drone bombing children, murdering children, ordering, murders of either children or having collateral damage as children? I think absolutely he would. Um, there's no I do not have any belief whatsoever that if Bernie became president that he would end the drone program. Um and there's really no indication that he would. I mean, maybe there's actually something that he said that he would put a full stop to that, but I feel like we would have heard that by now. And from what I understand, it's pretty common knowledge that he, has been pretty weak on pushing back against sort of the Obama paradigm of the war on terror. Yeah, I don't know if he's. I mean, I don't think he's overtly mentioned them, but he has said some things that sort of imply that he's okay with them being used in certain circumstances. Um, but yeah, I mean, in general, I don't have much hope or enthusiasm for Bernie's foreign policy ideology, and I've always felt this way. I think that he's actually really strong on a lot of other issues that are important to me, but foreign policy, I do not think he's very strong on. And yeah, I mean, so I guess now that Tulsi's out pretty much, she didn't go to the debate. She seems kind of like she's done at this point, even though she hasn't officially announced that her campaign is over. So I feel that right now it's kind of going between. It's going to be basically Bernie versus Biden. Warren is definitely still in the mix, but I have a feeling that she's not going to be around for much longer either. So I think that now it's time to at least, you know, just put a little bit more focus on Bernie's poor foreign policy record and the fact that, like just even the thought experiment of how much different is Bernie's rhetoric about foreign policy than Obama's. Was Obama, presenting himself as an anti-war in a similar way that Bernie is? Is Bernie much stronger on that? Um, Barbara, go back. There's someone at my front door, so my dog's barking. Barbara, go back to bed, babe. Go to bed, babe. I don't know if you can see my dog, Barbara, behind me. Baby, it's fine. Go to bed. It's a package. Barbara, go back to bed, baby. You're okay. You're okay. I just feel like I need to calm her down in case she keeps doing that. Barba, stop it. No. 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 She's got a little bit of a barking problem that seems to be getting worse, and I don't know what the deal is, but yeah, back to the topic at hand. Don't count out CNN's choice, Mayor Pete. I don't see Pete staying in for very much longer. I actually, one thing I noticed on the last debate was how much of an Obama-like orator he is. If you close your eyes when Pete Buttigieg, or whatever, however the fuck you pronounce his name, when you close your eyes and listen to him speak during the debates, you can almost picture Obama, like a white Obama. He's got this really specific, dialed in, very, very trained way of talking that most politicians don't bother to achieve. I mean, they sort of level out at a certain level of being like, competent orators, and they can sort of dish out their talking points in the mixture of like competent oration and being able to spread their talking points. But Pete Buttigieg has this very Obama-like quality that I think just that alone, he's going to go definitely higher places politically in the future. And I see this presidential run as mostly just an advertisement for that. So whatever he's aspiring to do after this is basically a big advertisement for that. Much like his actual service in Afghanistan was a deliberately planned out PR move to help him win political office. I don't think in any way that was authentic when he joined the army. I think he did it to help becoming a politician. Absolutely. And also that weird, shady CIA shit that he was up to. What's that all about? Modus operandi. No, not named after Barbara Lee. As much as I appreciate Barbara Lee's AUMF vote, I can say with assurance that I would never name any of my pets after a politician unless it was done sort of out of disdain or as a joke. I am kind of the mindset right now where I don't really support any politician. I feel that criticizing that when they fuck up and when they fail and when they have bad positions is much more valuable use of my time and energy than trying to stand for them or promote them in any way. So when it comes to Barbara Lee, her AUMF vote was great. I really respect her for that, but she's taken a lot of bad positions on a lot of other things, much like pretty much any other progressive person in Congress has. Hi, Trisha. Hi, Michael. How's it going? Sorry to disappoint, Michael. I'm not getting naked on this podcast. I can't rule it out, though, completely on a future podcast. All right, so today, the game I wanted to play for you guys is one that was actually requested by someone on the chat a few episodes ago. I don't remember who it was, but it's kind of the unofficial sequel to Aliens, the arcade game. Very different art style, arguably better art style, more advanced, sort of in the style of a 16-bit game, but it looks more advanced than something you would typically see on Super Nintendo or Genesis. It almost more has the feel of a Neo Geo SNK 32-bit, graphic level for 2D graphics. And I'm not going to play this game too seriously because I wanted to have kind of a dark conversation with you guys that's a little darker than I have gone so far on this series. So you guys will need to tell me if the sound on here is too loud or it's too quiet. How am I coming through? I feel like my sound is a little quiet, on the quiet side. What do you guys think? Is this loud enough? Check, 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 check. It seems oddly quiet to me. What do you guys think? Okay. That's great to hear, Trisha. So Trisha, I believe lives in Tasmania. Correct me if I'm wrong. And which is right near Australia. And she's saying that a lovely rain today is reducing the smoke from the mainland on the hills in the distance. I mean, that's really, really good news. I'm glad that there's some rain happening there right now. So I'm very happy to hear that. I have a good friend who lives in Australia right now, who has been in one of the worst air quality zones, where they're still allowing people to stay. And I've been quite worried about him. But he messaged me today. He's doing okay. The air quality is getting better, he said. He is actually a fellow experimental electronic musician who goes by the name of Dave Noyes. You guys should check his stuff out. Okay. Well, here's the game audio. I'm going to start the game. Tell me how it is with my voice. What do you think? All right. Now, for some reason, everyone picks this this anime-looking female character on this game. And she has the lowest power, but the highest skill. So, I'm gonna go with what these other gaming hardcore gamers do and pick her and see what happens. I've actually never chosen this character in this game before. I'm gonna move my mic a little bit so I can see the screen better. But I love this idea that they're even just beating up aliens. Like, I don't even remember in any of the movies if any character actually just had like a fist fight with a xenomorph like this. But you have this sort of this gun that you always have in the game, but it runs out of ammo very quickly. You constantly need to get it refilled. So what do you guys think of the level? Is it balanced okay? Okay, so today on this episode of MAME and Politics, I didn't just want to play Alien vs. Predator for you guys silently and talk about the game. I'm not going to talk about this game very much. I don't really know much about it. I just know that it was in the arcade. It was popular for a few years. It came out before the film Alien vs. Predator did. And I think it's more inspired by the Dark Horse comic series than anything else. But oddly, it also has the name of Arnold Schwarzenegger's character from the movie Predator in it. He's a selectable character, but his likeness actually doesn't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And for some reason, they gave him like a mech suit metal arm. It's kind of an interesting addition. He doesn't strike me as a character that would be using a mech suit in the movie Predator, but I guess that's the direction they decided to go in with this. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm surprised it was never ported. And I'm wondering if part of the reason it wasn't ported is because maybe just a licensing issue. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of these games that weren't ported over to home systems that are actually really good arcade games didn't, or they had like properties that might have been tied up in licensing. Like Aliens, for example. All the Aliens games for the arcade, I don't think any of them actually got home releases. except for maybe one of them. Sega owns Alien games now. Interesting. I wonder, did they do the Alien Isolation game, that like really atmospheric one that came out for PS3 or like early PS4? J-Doll music. Sorry, it's killing you. Okay, I'll start it. So one of the things I've been talking about on this, well, just in general, on Media Roots Radio, on Twitter, on previous live streams that I've done, has been this idea that the conspiracy movement as a whole seems to have taken this incredibly accelerated dive into an area where I believe, although I can't prove it, I don't have the receipts for you guys here, I believe there are entities, forces in this country and perhaps internationally that have a high budget to do this, that have deliberately tried to tank conspiracy culture and alternative media. And I first started to really notice it right before the election of Donald Trump. It's gotten much worse since then. So over the past 3 years, I believe what we've seen is not even a fracturing of the conspiracy movement, but sort of almost what I would call like a consolidation of, or a shoring up of all the narratives that are sort of out there in conspiracy culture, to sort of fit together and to become more of this sort of unanimous, or a lot of people sort of glom onto this more general singular narrative about things. And I'm not even talking about QAnon necessarily, but QAnon is a big part of this. Alex Jones obviously played a big role in this. So did Roger Stone. So if you want to point to like the obvious people who had a big effect on what I'm talking about, where you can make the argument that Alex Jones, as crazy and as much of a charlatan as he was previous to Trump and even in the early 2000s, he put out information that sometimes was very valuable. Like he was over the target at times about some of the information that he was putting out. And he would bring up information that almost, no mainstream media person would. Now, what you've seen over the last 3 years in the Trump era is that right-wing, like generic right-wing media outlets now absorb and prop up some of these conspiracy narratives. Like Pizzagate, for example. Or aspects of QAnon. Even if Republican media figures aren't directly promoting QAnon, they'll actually be indirectly promoting the exact same narrative as QAnon. That there is a secret group of patriots inside the U.S. government or inside the Pentagon or the military that has, on some level, appointed or chosen Donald Trump to run a counter coup against the deep state. And that the deep state is trying to do a coup on Donald Trump, even before he got elected. That's the sort of the general narrative. But I want you to do this thought experiment for me right now. Play this out. If Trump, let's say if Bush or any other president in the year 2007 did exactly what Trump did a couple of weeks ago, assassinated an Iranian general, started putting out rhetoric saying that there were imminent threats, that Iran was about to attack us and kill Americans, and that we needed to take out people. What would you expect to see at that point from the conspiracy movement as it existed in 2007? What kind of narratives would you have expected to see from people like Alex Jones or other people who were influenced by him or just other people in the conspiracy movement in general? I want you to think about this hard, because what's really striking to me is how much different the climate is now, where the skepticism against official government narratives has been significantly dialed back within the conspiracy movement. And instead of focusing mainly on the American government or what American government officials are saying, there seems to be more focus on the conspiracy movement now towards foreign actors. So you'll see a lot of people in the conspiracy movement instead of saying that Trump, is about to do this or his administration is about to do this or that, you'll see them say that Israel or Saudi Arabia is sort of dictating this foreign policy. So I find a similar running theme through a lot of the new conspiracy narratives that are existing right now in this current time period. And that theme is removing agency from the American deep state's attachment to war, first of all, removing agency from the U.S. empire, removing agency from all the U.S. propaganda apparatus that we've known for decades has been extremely dangerous. And I want some people to chime in on the chat right now and tell me what you think the conspiracy movement would have been saying about this current push to go to war with Iran, especially the idea that there are imminent attacks coming. What would you expect a conspiracy movement to be saying? And I have obviously my own opinion on what I would expect a conspiracy movement to be saying, but I want you guys to chime in first and share your thoughts on that. Think about that. If an administration was saying that we needed to assassinate a general of another country while saying that this general or there are imminent attacks coming, what would you expect the conspiracy narrative to be about that? So I'm going to wait like a minute or two for you guys to chime in on what your thoughts are about that. Play that out for me. Here. It's like a bull alien. Yeah, this game has some nice like combo kind of systems. It feels like I can like bounce off of guys and shit. Okay, so a few people have chimed in now. Someone says they'd probably be saying it's pre-9/11 all over again. Level 1 online says. The conspiracy movement would say we're in a police state. You have a good point, says. Someone else says definitely not, quote, trust the plan. Obnob says, what were the Big People Org's websites in the 2007 conspiracy movement? I'm too young to know what that was like. I'll answer that in a second. Daniel Crawford says, well, was Trump's anti-war base even much of a real phenomena? I guess there was a lot of evidence that Hillary Clinton was belligerent warmonger. Somebody else says, another attempt to start a war, start a rally around the flag movement, clamp down on dissent, etc. Modus operandi says, this is a false flag that stinks to high heaven, what Jones would have said. So I think I'm more in line with what Level Online, One Online, and Modus Operandi are saying in terms of the comments I'm getting. And let me explain. So if this was another, if we roll back the clock back to like 2007, and the president was trying to do the exact same thing Trump has tried to do now, rhetorically and through his actions, I would absolutely guarantee you that the main conspiracy narratives we'd be seeing out there would be the following. That the U.S. government, get ready, because the U.S. government or other deep state entities could be about to launch some kind of false flag terror attack in the United States and blame it on Iran. So that would be number one. The warning that, watch out, there could be some kind of event or mass casualty event that could be used to blame it on Iran. And if there is, it will likely be staged or falsely attributed. And I just should clarify, I don't think most of these type of events through history are staged. I think that actual real people usually always die. except in the case of like Operation Northwoods, where they're talking about inventing a whole fake soccer team, worth of people to like then say died in a plane shoot down. But I think generally speaking, you would see loud, vocal, frequent narratives being put out right now from the conspiracy movement to say that the U.S. government and the people in it, and even the neocons, the deep state, whoever, are planning to do some kind of false flag terror incident to get us into a war with Iran. In addition to that, what they would also be saying is that we're only a couple steps away from full-blown totalitarianism and fascism in this country. Post 9/11, civil liberties have been extremely eroded to a point that has not been rolled back really in any way, shape, or form. The Obama administration didn't bring back any of those rights. Bush didn't roll any of them back. So you'd have the second narrative, which would be we are just one or two events away from having a full-blown police state, potential martial law situation, fascist crackdown in the United States with militarized police. So you would see both of those narratives being prominently spoken aloud in the conspiracy movement right now. And this is what's really interesting to me. Back then, the conspiracy movement, even some of the charlatans like Alex Jones, were clearly more over a real target than they are now. I think that's undeniable. Generally speaking, I think that it's pretty clear that the conspiracy movement of 10 years ago was far more over the actual target of the power structures on this planet and the people who are actually doing the damage than they are right now. So I just want to make sure this doesn't come off as too convoluted. But I believe that it's actually really scary to think about why there is seemingly this really big attempt out there right now to shore up, consolidate, and Pied Piper the entire conspiracy movement into not just being pro-Donald Trump, because that's one problem, obviously. That's a one big, very, very big problem. But also consolidating it and trying to get people to all echo the same narrative. And all the QAnon followers would argue, no, this is it. This is like the time when we all need to come together. We are not all Q, or we are all Q, or whatever the fuck they say. There's this like incredible solidarity where it's like, no, everybody's waking up now to the deep state. Everybody's waking up now to the way that all this shit's being done. But obviously my point of view is that it's actually the opposite. Is that for some reason, the mainstreamification, for example, of the term deep state, I don't see that as a positive thing. I actually see that as a very weird thing that should be looked at as suspect. Why are people at Fox News talking about the deep state? You can maybe make the argument that, well, they're talking about it because they want to make it appear that the deep state are only Democrats. They want to create this sort of partisan framing about it. And they want to make people forget that Fox News in and of itself was one of the most blatant U.S. state media outlets during the Bush administration and basically shoved neoconservative propaganda down our throats on a daily basis. So that rebranding, just on a rebranding level, I could see why that would make sense. But there's another way to look at it too, which is the mainstreamification of some of these conspiracies and the shoring up of the narratives and to getting people like Sean Hannity to start talking about the deep state on Fox News. Examine that for a second. Like, why is that happening? If it's not just rebranding on Fox News' part. My dog's having a bad dream right now, in case you're wondering what the hell that noise was. I don't know if you can hear that. Andrew Rojas, couldn't the Occupy movement be looked at in the same light? You know, I think that's a fair point to make. Why did the Occupy movement become about sort of class rivalry, like going after the 1% instead of just going after like the 0.01% or the actual like bankers and stuff? I think that's a fair point. I mean, honestly, we talked plenty about this on our podcast a few years ago when the Occupy movement really flourished, especially in Oakland. And I remember it wasn't just the financial aspect of it that seemed a little weird to me, the narrative framing that it went with, but also how the Occupy movement was really exploding during the bombing of Libya under the Obama administration. And I remember seeing a lot of like still pro-Obama stuff at the Occupy Oakland rallies and being really bummed out by it. I mean, yeah. But I think this is the dark thought experiment I want people to think about for a second. Now, Trump, for whatever reason, is just all over the map. And I think that's one of the silver linings to what's going on here, is that even though he's horrific and he puts out rhetoric that in some ways is even much more extreme than Dick Cheney and George W. Bush from the post 9/11 era, he's so scatterbrained and he changes his mind from day to day that's one of the only positive things actually out of his administration, that he's a wild card. Now, that could go both ways. That could mean that tomorrow he could decide to bomb Iran, just at the spur of the moment. So it's bad and good. But I think what we saw over the past couple of weeks is a really scary possibility. Now, I don't think enough people are looking at this imminent attack framing the right way. And by that, I mean, I feel like a lot of people are kind of mocking the Trump administration for backing down from that rhetoric and sort of that, oh, they must have lied about it being an imminent threat. Look at those liars, So if it wasn't an imminent threat, what was the justification? Blah, blah, blah. Well, I look at it differently than that. I think what's actually more dangerous out of what the Trump administration did during that brief moment was that they brought out the rhetoric again that hasn't been used since the Bush era. Keep in mind, even as horrible as the Obama administration was, rhetorically, Obama decided to dial down that color-coded fear-mongering, the sort of terrorism fear-mongering that the Bush administration thrived on. Someone in Trump's administration, because I don't think it was Trump himself, decided to roll the clock back to that era and experimentally, for a brief moment, bring that era back and put us back to that time period. We were literally back in the Bush administration for a second, where it was like, they're going to be imminent attack. Like, there are imminent attacks. There will be terrorist attacks, and we need to murder these people to stop them. Now, they were super vague about it. They didn't say if they were like Americans on American soil or American soldiers. But I think we could have been in for a really, really scary time last week, where if Trump and his administration officials decided to keep going along with that rhetoric, that there would be continuing imminent threats from Iran or other alleged terrorist entities, plus the fact that the conspiracy movement has been completely shored up and distracted and Pied Piper into believing in completely idiotic things, and QAnon and things like that, we would have actually been in a much worse way. Okay, let me restate this. We would have been in a much worse way had there been a mass casualty event in this country than we were after 9/11 during the Bush administration. And if that doesn't make sense, let me explain. After 9/11 during the Bush administration, there was still an explosion of conspiracy and alternative media researchers who were all independently, not consolidating their narratives together, trying to poke holes in Bush's rhetoric, logic, and the official story of 9/11, the war on terror, pretty much right after 9/11. there was a pretty healthy amount of it. It was all on the internet, though. Keep in mind, it was all online. We didn't really see very much of it on any other form of media. Now, right now, I feel that the conspiracy movement has been so misdirected and Pied Pipered that there would actually be all these mechanisms in place to already have narratives set up to Pied Piper people towards after a mass casualty event. So let that sink in for a second. If another mass casualty event like 9/11 happened right now under the Trump administration, with the conspiracy movement and the alternative media movement in the state that it's in, we would immediately be seeing misdirections happening to try to route people into specific narratives instead of people having sort of a naturally born skepticism against the administration. That skepticism seems to have been removed largely from the conspiracy movement. People in general in the conspiracy movement seem to be more skeptical of the impeachment, for example, than they are of Trump's administration. So all those things combined, I think we're really setting ourselves up for a very dangerous situation here. And I also don't think it can be understated that whoever was behind 9/11, because I don't believe it was Al-Qaeda, in case anyone listening thinks that I believe that, I do not believe 9/11 was the work of Al-Qaeda whatsoever. I believe at the most, there were some maybe Al-Qaeda participants who were used as proxies or cutouts for other intelligence agencies or deep state networks. Now, that being said, I don't believe that the people who pulled off 9/11 were satisfied with the results that they got. And I think that that's been made abundantly clear with the Russia hysteria. So, that being said, I think that we are facing possibly another mass casualty event in the style of 9/11. Whether it's going to happen under the Trump administration or a future administration, I can't say. I might be completely wrong about this prediction. But since 9/11, on some level, I have been waiting for the other shoe to drop. All these things were set up after 9/11. The Patriot Act, Homeland Security, Gitmo. Those are all still there, everybody. So what happens if another 9/11 level event happens now under Trump? With the conspiracy movement completely misdirected and distracted into thinking Trump is actually better than the deep state, they're still in this weird framing. I think we're setting ourselves up for an incredibly dangerous situation. And by incredibly dangerous situation, I mean full-blown fascism in this country. Full-blown. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being hyperbolic. I think that it's extremely likely that that will happen if there's another 9/11 style event. Now the question is, will there be another 9/11 style event? Hopefully not. But we already know how well the 9/11 attacks plus the anthrax attacks worked to get the American public's guard down enough to get us to go into Iraq. We already know how well that worked. We already know how well fear-mongering works to paralyze people and to get them to not fight back against the U.S. government and to get them to fight amongst themselves. So I just want you to think about how scary that could be and how quickly that can happen if under the Trump administration another 9/11 style event takes place. Because I think that there was a clue in the last couple of weeks that there was someone in the Trump administration who turned that switch back on and then decided to turn it off really quickly. They were ready to start pumping out rhetoric again that imminent attacks were coming. Imminent attacks on the United States soil. That is a rollback to the Bush era. That is rolling back the clock to the post-9/11 era. That was the whole point of 9/11 and the knockout punch of the anthrax attacks. 9/11 alone wouldn't have been able to get us in such a state of fear, paralyzed fear. We needed to have two attacks back to back to be so paralyzed that we would think that more terrorist attacks would keep happening and that they would just keep indefinitely happen. So, if you guys have anything to say about that, say so in the chat. Do you think I'm nuts for believing that this is a possibility or being really concerned about this? Do you think it's reasonable? Or do you have a counter opinion to it? Do you actually believe that we are in a stronger position now because of the state of the conspiracy movement and alternative media? I mean, everyone is talking about the deep state now, right? Everyone is talking about how the U.S. helps prop up Al-Qaeda too, right? So that should mean that everybody's ready to be skeptical of another mass casualty event, right? I mean, someone could go along with that logic because often that seems to be the logic presented to me. Well, Tucker is talking about the war, Robbie. Why can't you give him credit? There seems to be a sort of a continuing theme like that. So I just want to I want to get some other opinions from you guys on here in here. White Seed says, I feel like we are headed towards fascism regardless. Another 9/11 would just accelerate the process. I completely agree with that. I think that ever since 9/11, that was my wake-up call that America was going to turn fascist. It was just a matter of time. I know that sounds horrible. That sounds awful. And with it, other, major Western nations will also go fascist. If America goes full fascist, the UK and all the, Western countries that America is allied with will also go in a similar direction. I honestly don't think a foreign nation would attack California besides the U.S. Well, Newt Gingrich did say that he hopes liberals wake up to terrorism after a California terrorist attack. And about a month or two after good old Newty, said that, there was the San Bernardino shooting. That's true. You can look that up. Newt Gingrich's wife is actually the ambassador to the Vatican. He is constantly accompanying Trump and basically inside the White House on a regular basis. Newt Gingrich has been a shadow advisor this whole time, in case you didn't know that. He's not traditionally labeled a neocon, but he is as neocon as you can get. I mean, he sounds like Dick Cheney when talking about all this same stuff I'm talking about today. Listen to Newt Gingrich talking about terrorism. Listen to him talking about Iran. Listen to him talking about anthrax or the 9/11 attacks. It's a really, really scary dude. Really scary. Who will the bad guy be this time, Unbuttered Toast said? Well, I mean, I think it's obvious. It's going to be Iran. If we tried to scapegoat some kind of mass casualty event here on ISIS, that's not useful. I think it would also be not useful if it was Al-Qaeda. I think it pretty much has to be some kind of Iranian entity at this point. It's going to be a domestic attack to round up guns and support Barr's pre-crime bill. Andrew Gunnar, I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. I don't think, even if that was, let's just say, even if that pipe dream sort of idea about that they're going to come to take their guns is true, and that that's a plan that's been planned out. Let's assume that that actually is true for the sake of argument. It's just not possible to do. There's too many guns in this country. Too many people hoarding guns, too many people who know their civil rights. They're going to board themselves up in their home and fight off feds trying to take their guns. It's going to be like a Waco, 10 times a day if that happens in this country. So I would make the argument that what's happening now with QAnon and all the militia movements and the conspiracy movement is they're literally trying, entities, ruling class factions, deep state, whoever you want to call it, I don't know. And I can't prove anything I'm saying to you. This is all speculation. But there is a concerted effort being made right now on the internet to shore up all the militia movements and sort of conspiracy-minded gun owners into trusting the plan. Look it up. There's almost no militia you can find now that's not pro-Trump and MAGA-pilled. So I would argue that what they've actually done is they've figured out a way to Pied Piper even all the militia movements and all the armed people into supporting the feds. So they don't need to take the guns, even if that was the plan. They don't need to take it. That what they actually probably want to do instead is turn those people into brown shirts for the feds. Because if you can't take their guns, why don't you make them part of our fascist force? And I think that that's actually a more likely possibility, is that those people could easily become brown shirts for this future of American fascism that I'm talking about. And it's not even going to be a civil war. Those are the people that are going to be doing martial law checkpoints. You know how like militias and stuff join with Border Patrol now and try to go round up illegal immigrants and actually are caught on camera saying that they wish they could have just shot them all, including young women and children. This is on record. Minutemen-style militias going and rounding up immigrants trying to cross the border. Imagine that, but on a mass scale, where instead of the Alex Jones warning about, the military is going to set up checkpoints, folks, well, it's going to be these people that are going to be side by side with the QAnon patriot military, doing checkpoints. I just want you to imagine that scenario. The militia movement as a whole has been completely co-opted by QAnon or whatever has happened to the conspiracy movement at this point. I challenge you to actually name me a paleo-conservative, libertarian-leaning, or right-leaning militia that isn't pro-Trump right now. I challenge you to do that. Independent brown shirts were seen as a problem later on by the Nazi government. That's absolutely right, Obnobs. That's why that will probably be only one stage of it. They will have to be taken out at some point. Too. Absolutely right. I mean, I like the way you're thinking. This is because that will, these same steps, some of them that happened in Nazi Germany have already happened in the United States. We've already seen them. I mean, there's clear signs of that. The Reichstag fire was essentially their 9/11. And that's happened almost 19 years ago now. So faint signals from Vega. Tricia says, I wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. government started rounding up left journalists and imprisoning them. Well, we're already seeing a backdoor version of that taking place, where left-leaning journalists are being censored and shadow banned. Press TV, Iran's official state TV channel that's in English, that had a YouTube channel, just got their YouTube channel completely removed offline. Soleimani, the general that was assassinated by the Trump administration, anybody on Instagram right now saying positive things about Soleimani will have either their posts removed or their account banned. This is not just happening in secret or behind the scenes on Instagram. This is literally a policy that they announced. Reddit also said, yes, Peter H. Blumenthal got detained by the FBI. Also, a guy that's for some reason not getting enough attention, his name is Rubenstein, another reporter, also got detained by the FBI as well. So just want to throw that out there. For some reason, that guy's not getting any mention for also getting arrested. Another, I believe, is an American reporter who was there covering the Venezuelan embassy takeover. But I forgot his first name. You have a good point. I feel bad actually not even knowing his first name. His name should be out there since he got arrested. So I'm doing a disservice to him by not knowing his last name. Look at Brian Becker's Twitter feed. He actually, I think, helped both of them with their legal case in that. It's not Alex Rubinstein. It was a different Rubinstein. I don't even think they're related. Signals from Vegas says when censoring doesn't work anymore via YouTube, etc. online, left journalists get more of a following. That's when it's going to get very nasty, I think. Well, I think you're absolutely right. We've already seen a growing climate of that, where even someone like Cenk Uygur, who's by any measure like mostly kind of neoliberal, he's more like a neoliberal progressive hybrid at this point. Even someone like him, who's not even really radical, gets out there and tries to run for Congress, and he got completely smeared by CNN and New York Times. So if you just step out of the framework even a little bit, and you challenge the establishment, you will get smeared. This is why I don't think Tulsi, for example, is truly a radical. I don't think you can say that because she's being smeared by MSM, that means she is a huge threat to them. I think that they basically smear anyone who's even a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of a threat to them. So that's not, you can't say that she's radical because they're smearing her, or that she's posing a threat to the military-industrial complex, so they're smearing her. They just don't want anybody to step out of the box at all. And if you do, you put your tippy toe outside the box, they'll come for you. They really will. Ben Rubenstein. Thanks, Peter H. Yeah, that was his name. Oh, it's Alex Rubinstein's brother. Interesting. Thanks, Aaron. I had no idea. Alex Rubinstein was doing some great coverage while he was inside the embassy, which is pretty crazy that happened. It only seemed like a few months ago that happened. Why do folks ignore Gabbard's pro-Israel position? It's exhausting. Well, I think, Tricia, it's more like folks actually pretend that her past associations with hardcore Christian evangelical Zionists doesn't mean anything. And that because she said some mildly pro-Palestinian things now, that's enough to erase the fact that she was literally palling around with some of the most crazy Zionist Likudnik motherfuckers ever. So they're just not honest about it. If, let's just say, a Bernie did a speech on the same stage as Netanyahu at the same event, you better believe that all of Tulsi's fans would be going after him. So it's a big double standard. It's exhausting, but it's also honestly pathetic that they can't properly audit their own candidate that they're like very, very strongly behind. I mean, it does speak to just a lack of the ability to fully engage. That's why Tulsi fans have gone for the low blows against Abby and I instead of actually addressing most of our really solid critiques on her. So, for example, Abby said she doesn't understand why Tulsi's running because, she's basically running against Bernie. And if she supports Bernie, then why is she running against him? So everybody took that clip of Abby saying that and tried to reduce all of her non-support of Tulsi Gabbard to that one reason. Well, again, it's kind of a pathetic, cherry picking, because Abby and I have been saying dozens of reasons for over a year on the podcast of why she's a problematic candidate if your main issue is foreign policy. So conveniently, it allows all the Tulsi stands to not address what we've said. So again, kind of pathetic, but that's the way they roll, It's for some reason they don't want to address her past. They just want everybody to believe she's great now, listen to her rhetoric now, and that's really all that matters. So I don't want to get stuck on Tulsi Gabbard. You guys know how I already feel about it. I have a lot of shit to say about it. Damn, I've almost been going for an hour now, and I've barely played any games. I'm sorry, guys. I wonder if there's some Hasbra embedded in the Gabbard supporters. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of done speculating about her because it's... I kind of actually what made me want to stop speculating about her is when Hillary Clinton came out and said that she could either be a Russian agent or trying to run third party or run for the other party. I think Hillary Clinton basically smeared her with all three. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that, if that's what Hillary did. But that's how I remember it, is she was kind of like covering all bases in her smear. Obnob says she's irrelevant. I would disagree. I think for this election, she's pretty irrelevant at this point. But I think that she's having a profound influence on the way people talk about war. And other than resisting the general idea of war, I think that the rhetoric that she's influencing people with is actually helping hurt and cripple the anti-war movement's power when we actually need it to be as powerful as possible. And we need it to sort of go back to its roots. Close down military bases. Stop the U.S. empire. Stop bombing all these countries all the time. I mean, we need to get out of this paradigm that bombing ISIS is good, but other things are not. Bombing anybody with U.S. military planes in other countries is not good. There's no reason for it. It's our fault that ISIS exists in the first place. So wait, it's okay now to go back in there and just start bombing it again? I mean, it really does become sort of circular logic. So that's where we just need to zoom out. And I'm, instead of just going after Tulsi for this, I think that it's more important to just be like, look, let's zoom out from what her rhetoric is and create a broader, stronger form of anti-war. We don't even have to talk about her in that discussion. We just have to broaden the scope of how we oppose war. And that includes fully opposing the war on terror, like David Kapoor just brought up. No war on terror rhetoric, absolutely. It needs to be, because honestly, regime change wars, I don't see them as the primary paradigm right now. We're still under the endless war on terror. That to me is more of a priority. I mean, of course, we need to stop regime change wars. We absolutely do. But even Trump, is trying to articulate the difference between, no, he doesn't want regime change in Iran. He just wants to fuck it up and bomb 55 historical sites in Iran. So I think I'm just trying to stress that we need to broaden the framing for how we oppose war. Otherwise, we're basically trying to lower the bar to match how we oppose war with people who are basically like Johnny-come-latelys to the anti-war movement, who really only oppose it because they don't want our money wasted in the Middle East. So I don't think we need to match that. We don't need to go down to their level. We need to stay at a more high, broader level of opposing war, and those people, can maybe eventually join us. And we need to encourage those people to adopt a broader, more zoomed out perspective on how to oppose war. And also to include more of a moral framework in that. I don't think, you're not going to convince many people on the right who claim to oppose war about this, but I still think it's important to mention at every turn, look, we don't have the right to go bomb other countries and to kill their people. We just don't have the moral right to do that. It's morally reprehensible to do this. That in and of itself has been lost from the debate about war. And I find that also upsetting. I see a lot of people talking about opposing regime change wars and why we shouldn't do this or that. But I think that the morality behind it is sort of missing a lot of the time. And you'll notice that on the right, they never talk about the morality. I mean, even a lot of libertarians have lost that. There was this non-aggression principle that libertarians were heavily pushing back during more the Ron Paul pre-Tea Party era. That's gone too. It's more like, why are we wasting all this money over there? Bring all boys home. Paying too many taxes on these wars. It's not that strong anti-war message that libertarians used to have. So I just realized, have I actually not continued yet? This is probably like the best I've ever done on a game. Or maybe I have, but I feel like this is the least shitty gaming I've done for you guys so far. Possibly. You could dispute that in the chat if you want. Just when I said that, I fucking died again. I feel like both of these video games, so Aliens and Alien vs. Predator, have kind of a fun element to them that was never... Oh, shit! That was never really done in the movies, where there's basically like zombies that have been like infected by face huggers or alien xenomorph eggs or something. That would have been cool if one of the Alien movies just had a bunch of people that were like zombies. Like these fucked up zombies with like face huggers on their faces. Has an Alien movie done that that I'm not aware of? You have a good point, says there's active sabotage in the anti-war movement. Elaborate on that. I want to hear about that. Because I recently saw a few Antifa accounts, I don't know if you guys noticed this, going after Answer Coalition, which is sort of one of the main groups organizing anti-war protests right now. Mike Preisner, my sister's fiance, who's a veteran, Iraq war veteran and anti-war activist now. He is part of that group. And he's in California taking part in their rallies. And Antifa went after Answer Coalition for being part of what they called as the Red-Brown Alliance. Now, for people who don't know about this, the Red-Brown Alliance is like sort of a conspiracy being pushed by not just this guy, but a lot of people actually that are on the left right now. But one of the main guys who's pushing it's named Alexander Reed Ross, who's a geography professor who, for some reason, SPLC let him publish this extremely long-winded smear piece in it, which basically consolidated together almost every sort of semi-well-established anti-war journalist, anti-U.S. empire journalist, as being part of some kind of Red-Brown Alliance Duganist fascist conspiracy. So that's a really interesting thing. But they basically are trying to imply that Answer Coalition is this because Brian Becker has a Sputnik show. So because Brian Becker, who's a part of the organizing effort of Answer Coalition, had a Sputnik show or has one, that's enough to write off the entire Answer anti-war rallies, apparently, to some of these hardcore Antifa people because they're part of the Red-Brown Alliance. One of the tweets actually even showed that Richard Spencer retweeted Abby at one point to imply that there's some sort of Red-Brown Alliance. Well, that's ridiculous because, of course, there's going to be some crossover. Richard Spencer, is so anti-Semitic that he might latch on to something that's actually like hitting the Israeli government or something. I mean, I actually don't even know what he believes about Israel, but trying to use that sort of guilt by association against the Answer Coalition, it's extremely disingenuous. But you're already seeing it happening from certain sectors of the left. And it's a left that I'm frankly very suspicious of. I think it's very cop-like behavior in general. I'm not trying to snitch jack at anybody in particular. Most of these Antifa accounts are still anonymous, even though I actually know the names of a few people who run them. So I'm not in the business of doxing normally. But, if some of these anonymous accounts keep trying to smear Abby for I don't know where they're implying that she's some kind of crypto fascist or whatever. I will dox some of them. But yeah, it's weird. It's a problem for sure. Wait, what? Unbuttered toast. That's not real, is it? Virginia declares a state of emergency due to militias threatening to storm the Capitol? What? What? Okay, hold on a second. Might need to take a detour on this podcast. Right when we were talking about the fucking QAnon shit and how they're all going to be brown shirts for the president? You got to be kidding me. Hold on a second. Hold on, guys. It's not trending on Twitter yet. I'm going to type this in here. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it looks real. I'm only seeing it from Vice right now, the reporting. Jeez, that's kind of scary. The only reason why Virginia might make sense, Oz Whistles, is because I think you can get into D.C. from Virginia, and Virginia still has open carry laws. It's a very strange situation, actually, that there's a state that allows open carry that's like within a half-hour driving distance from D.C. I mean, actually, part of the Smithsonian museums are in Virginia. The Air and Space Museum is in Virginia, and I visited that. And I can't remember if I saw it or my wife saw it in a grocery store, a guy just open carrying, walking around, grabbing groceries. Or maybe that was Abby who told me that. Because Abby used to live in D.C. Dulles Airport. Is Dulles Airport in Virginia? Yeah, I'm married. My wife is really cool. Her name's Lori. She's actually been on the podcast before. And she was actually part of my first foray into media. Incidentally, she helped me make the fake beheading video in 2004. She was helping direct it. She helped me make the fake blood for it. And, so she's in some of the original newspaper articles that came out about it. So I have to be honest, as cool as this game is, I've never played it this far in before. And it's a little bit on the repetitive side in terms of like the gameplay and stuff. I feel like 2 players would definitely make this game a lot more entertaining. I like that though. That's pretty cool. We actually met a long time ago. So I met her when I was in high school. And we didn't actually get together and start dating until I was in college. So I've known her for a long time. Yeah. And we've been married. We've been together for almost 20 years. It's pretty crazy. So I'm sorry if I put out too much of a dark narrative about what could happen in this country after another mass casualty event. But I do think it's important, and I'm not trying to fearmonger or get Alex Jonesy with you guys. I just do think it's important to remind people of how close we already are to that. You know, how surprising and unexpected 9/11 was in and of itself for everybody. I mean, you know, if you had, I guess what I'm saying is, don't let your guard down. Don't latch on to some of these conspiracy narratives too quickly that other people are putting out. Try to think for yourself and do your own research. There are just too many charlatans out there now. I mean, one good example is this guy George Webb. I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with his stuff, but he's basically like a new version of, I don't even know what to compare him to. I mean, he's kind of like Alex Jones. He's kind of basically putting out a lot of the same information that QAnon does. But right now, him and Daniel Hopsicker are trying to smear Mint Press News and Whitney Webb, claiming that they're simultaneously part of the Iran government or the CIA. And this guy has a huge following. I mean, I've met people in real life who are like, "Oh yeah, dude, I watch George Webb every day. Like, he's my favorite." And I'm like, "What in the fuck? How on earth did you get so goddamn dumb?" I mean, I didn't say that to their faces, but that's what I'm thinking in my head. I'm just like, wait a second. I thought you were like savvy, and I thought you had the ability to be able to tell the difference between like shitty grifter conspiracy stuff and like decent conspiracy fact. But I think a lot of people have lost that ability. I don't know why Hopsicker would blatantly trash his own credibility with something that sloppy. I don't know. And I don't know why he's associating himself with George Webb. That seems very much against what he's been trying to do for his career. Wait, video game Vision Quest. George Webb is weird. I was fascinated by his live streams for a while. Webb literally got drunk on cam once and confessed that he was Mossad. That's hilarious. If you have any links to that, please post that. I mean, I think he's probably lying if he said that. But I remember watching a live stream of his actually where he said Seth Rich was still secretly alive. So for Daniel Hopsicker, a guy who went after David Ray Griffin for being like a crazy truther, because Hopsicker was trying to, distance himself from 9/11 truth, even though foundationally his most famous work was about poking holes in the 9/11 official story. Hopsicker went after truthers like David Ray Griffin for being charlatans, or he thought they were charlatans. But yet George Webb is one of the biggest charlatans I've ever seen, and Hopsicker's clanning up with him and trying to take down Mint Press together with him. And it's just like, why would you be this dumb, dude? Do you know who this guy is? Like, come on. It just seems really like, I just feel like Hopsicker actually probably doesn't really know who he is. And maybe just watch a few of his videos or something. I mean, pretty much everybody knows that he's a fraud. Unless you're like a QAnoner, or unless you got fully down that weird MAGA chud rabbit hole of like conspiracy, the Pied Piper conspiracy movement. It's weird. Very weird. I gotta fuck up the alien queen now. Gotta fuck up the queen, dude. So the other game I was actually gonna play on the channel today is Popeye. but I couldn't find it on the list just now. I know it's on here, but I don't know how to actually look through the whole list alphabetically. So this might be the only game I play for you guys today. I hope that's okay. Nice. Andrew Gunnar, I love it when you and Abby call each other dude. Is that a California thing? I don't know if that's as much of a California thing as it is a stoner thing. And the fact that that's just how we talk to each other. I mean, the fact that I say hella on the podcast is definitely a California thing, though. Undeniably. Narc is not on here, David. That's actually one of my favorite Midway games. I wish it was on here. That's a bummer. It showed all the characters like coming out with me into the thing. So I guess on this level I'm just fighting humans. Fucking up humans. It's pretty cool. Fuck you, human motherfuckers. JRPG? Yes. The only, you know, it's funny that you asked that, White Seed. The only RPG I ever got into is a relatively obscure one called Panzer Dragoon Saga for the Sega Saturn. It was, I believe, a 4 CD game. It was the longest, biggest game ever made for the Sega Saturn. Retail price for it was something like $100 when it first came out. I remember buying it at Toys R Us. It was like the Sega Saturn was already on its way out, and I went to Toys R Us, walked in, bought myself a copy. And the game is freaking awesome. I mean, it's a beautifully done RPG. Obnobs, I think you're referring to Panzer Dragoon Orta, which was a rail shooter in the classic style of the previous Panzer Dragoon games. Panzer Dragoon Saga is the only RPG version of the game that they made. And I think it's better than all the other Panzer Dragoon games. I mean, it's an amazing game. Fucking great. And you can still emulate it and play it now. I mean, there's some great Sega Saturn emulators out there now. You can pretty much emulate anything now. Some things you can't emulate super well, though. Like, they don't emulate perfectly. Even some stuff on MAME that's from, like, the mid-90s doesn't emulate very well. I'm getting a little bored by this game, guys. Does anyone care if I switch to a new game before I log off here? This is just a little on the repetitive side. It's beautiful to look at times. I mean, I will give it that. I'm going to end this with something I've been wanting to play just because it's so goddamn hard. And also, it's a disappointing sequel. So I don't know if you've seen Double Dragon 1 and 2. Basically, Double Dragon is credited as being the first true beat 'em up game. And it's still actually really well done. Adam G asks, what do you guys think Hillary Clinton's favorite video game is? She probably likes fucking like shit modern like first person shooter video games, like probably like Battlefield or something. That's what I would think her favorite video game is. Or she likes something like just like really that was like really trendy, like Parappa the Rapper for PS1. I could see Hillary getting into Parappa the Rapper. Or Dance Dance Revolution. I could see Hillary doing really well on Dance Dance Revolution in a you know, in one of her like weird suits. Okay, so here's Double Dragon 3, which I don't know if you guys have ever seen the arcade version of Double Dragon 3, but there's a kind of a problem with the way that the sprites are animated that always really bugged the shit out of me. And it starts off so fucking hard that it's basically like the ultimate quarter muncher right on the first level in the first scene. There's like 5 enemies coming for you, kicking your ass. And like I remember when I first played it, I'm like, wait a second, how are you even supposed to get through this one, screen of the game? Well, I've gotten a little bit better at it. And again, the NES version of Double Dragon 3, way better than the arcade version. So look at the way that these sprites animate. Look how choppy this shit is. The actual like animations in and of themselves are not bad, but the way that the characters move around the level is weird. Look at that. And it's hard as hell, too. I mean, this game is just insanely hard. You guys probably thought I wasn't going to suck this bad at this game. Well, you were wrong. This game is hard as shit. Yeah, look at that. When you go up the screen, look at how choppy that is. Like, why couldn't they fix that before they released the game? It would have actually been so much better. Look at how choppy that shit is. It's so weird. Yeah, the hit detection is wonky too, but it was always a little wonky on Double Dragon, I would argue. You have to get really close, kind of, to hit people. And I'm just going to do the plug for my Patreon right now. Just to get it out of the way. If you want to see more of these and you like the idea of this, or you just support my work in general, you can help me out on Patreon by donating or subscribing to my Patreon at patreon.com/Robbie Martin. About 50% of these streams, if you miss them, will only be available to Patreon subscribers after the fact. That's pretty cool. You can jump off the wall. If you want to support our podcast that I do with Abby Martin, my sister, you can donate to patreon.com/Media Roots Radio. And, if you don't just want to be my Patreon subscriber, but you actually want to get something in return for it other than my content that I do online, you can purchase a copy of A Very Heavy Agenda on DVD still, or you can watch it on demand at averyheavyagenda.com. Yeah, and also check out my Bandcamp page, bandcamp.fluorescentgrey.com. Fluorescent-gray, actually. Fucker. Thank you, South of the Border Smoker. Thanks for your support. Were you the one who said you got your mom to watch it with you? Just part 1? I was impressed that someone said that the other day. And just, I wanted to give you guys a little preview of A Very Heavy Agenda 4. I might as well right now. But Very Heavy Agenda 4 is going to be largely an attempt to get people to think outside of their bubbles. I was having a long conversation with Tom Secker the other day, and he was trying to help me out with sort of collating all the different ideas and different story threads I'm working with for the movie. Adam or J Doll Music says, will there be a 4-part DVD? No, there will not. Basically, I got about 1,000 of those boxes made. Because it was actually cheaper than getting less of them made. Or it wasn't cheaper, it just made more economic sense too. So the trilogy is going to stay a trilogy, even though I already plan on calling A Very Heavy Agenda 4 Episode 4. It's going to kind of almost be like a sly parody of Star Wars Episode 4, where it's just going to be a standalone movie. I might have a subtitle that might actually be the main title, where A Very Heavy Agenda Episode 4 is the subtitle. And it's going to be all over the map. Please go on Libertarian Podcast to promote it. Andre Gunner, I mean, I have no issue with doing that. I'm not opposed to it. I just don't know what Libertarian Podcast would invite me on at this point, honestly. I don't know how many allies I still have left in that scene. I don't know. There might be some bad blood between me and Daniel McAdams now. Even though I like him as a person, I've been going really hard after Rand Paul. And, you know, I can't imagine that makes some of those people too happy. Go do David Icke's new media service with Jason Burmis. What the hell are you talking about? I'm actually about to do Jason's show right after this. So, that's weird. I'll have to find out what I'll ask him about that. Dave Smith, I've already tried to get on his show. Didn't work out. His old co-host on Part of the Problem, Mike, actually got me on his show. He had seen A Very Heavy Agenda and liked it. I sent Dave a copy via email. Never got a response. Just tried to reach out to him multiple times and never got a response. I mean, you know, it happens. Some people just don't want to respond. A non-response is a response in and of itself, right? And that sometimes happens, you know, in this world, and you really can't do anything about it. But yeah, I like Dave. I think his politics, especially his foreign policy politics, are rather good. He's gotten a little too socially conservative for me since he's had a child, and he's pretty much admitted as much, where he's like anti-abortion now and just more into the family values sort of end of conservatism. And apparently Owen Benjamin had some kind of influence on his thinking in this direction. But what's really funny is Owen Benjamin is actually a flat earther now, which is pretty hilarious. I mean, and so, you know, like Eddie Bravo, it seems like there's a lot of these sort of MAGA pilled people, these red-pilled conspiracy people who just go so far that they just go all the way to flat earth. And they're serious about it, too. They're not like... they're not joking around. Like, they're legit serious about flat earth. This is fucking hard, dude. Look at this. I like how you just immediately go to China in this game and you're just, like, fighting all these Chinese dudes. They just, like, come for you. Dave Smith got embarrassed by Sam Cedar. How? I don't know what he did. Oh, man. Okay. Well, since I got my ass killed really quickly in this game, well, thank you again, you guys, for listening. I really appreciate you joining me today on this episode of MAME Politics. Probably going to do another one of these tomorrow. Probably going to do it earlier, or I might do one very late at night tonight. Early morning, like 1 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Kind of curious to see what people are up and you know, and other parts of the world that want to check out my streams at that time. So if you want to join me, either tomorrow, same time as today, or check back with me again on my social media on Twitter, at Fluorescent Grey, about a surprise stream tonight. So thanks a lot, guys. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.